Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Hey, thank you so much for joining us here on our YouTube channel for episode number 1043, everybody. Well, today we are going to be profiling a young lady named Anna Ridenour coming to us from southeast Minnesota. And I think the theme of today's interview truly is finding your passion. And this is an overused term that is thrown out all the time. But I think where we get to in the end of this interview with Anna, because she has a ton of passion. She's got a ton of information. She knows where she wants to head, and she's accomplished a lot in the FFA. She's been in the FFA 7 years, and she is just a senior in high school right now. But one of the key things that really, really jumps out is that finding your passion isn't just about figuring out what it is. A lot of times it's about trying other things and realizing those are not your passion and leading you into this area. And I think that in speaking with Anna, we kind of illustrate that very, very well. And I think that's really the main emphasis of today's interview. So I am very excited to bring that to you and to introduce you to this young lady. And we're going to get that started for you right now. Anna, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. I am looking forward to speaking with you and finding out all about you and everything you do in the FFA and all of that. So very, very happy to speak with you. And could I start off by just asking you a few questions about you to get to know who you are?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So where are you talking to us from right now?
I am from Dodge Center, Minnesota, which is in the southeast part of Minnesota, halfway between Owatonna and Rochester.
Okay. I actually, I've never been to Minnesota, but
Really?
I am becoming more and more familiar with Minnesota geography because I get to interview so many people from Minnesota. I always look up where they're from. So when you say halfway between Owatonna and Rochester, I have a vision in my mind of right where that's at. So you're very close to Iowa and Wisconsin then. Do I have that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. And you're home. Are you at home right now?
I am at home, right? Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so home for you, is that a farm? Is that in town? Or is that like maybe a small acreage in between those two things?
So I do live in the country on a farm, but we only have 10 acres just because we really focus on a livestock side and just having smaller facilities. So it is a smaller acreage, but we are out in the country.
Okay, very good. That's very similar to me. Small farm outside of town a ways. So very good. Okay. And you're a senior this year?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so your episode's coming out on April 12th. Has anybody told you congratulations on graduation yet?
No, they have not. And actually, what's really cool about April 12th is that is actually my birthday that's being released.
Ah!
So that's a cool birthday present. I'll take that.
Oh, okay, awesome. Well, the stars aligned for your episode to come out on your birthday because we had, so just to let you know, and I'm probably boring everybody with inside baseball here, but to let you know, we do our interviews ahead of time for our FFA shows, and we schedule them. I've got to schedule it. And today we had 2 interviews scheduled prior to yours. One had to reschedule. The other one, we couldn't complete it because of technical difficulties, which bumped your episode up to April 12th. So there you go. It was meant to be. It was in the stars.
That is cool.
Okay, so happy early birthday. Even though this is coming out on your birthday, it's going to sound like I did it on purpose. And congratulations on your graduation early as well, because that is great.
Thank you.
Good for you. That's great. All right. How long have you been part of the FFA?
I've been a part of FFA since 6th grade, so about 7 years now. So I really started in 6th grade with just a livestock project showing at the county fair, but really got more involved in 9th grade when I saw the leadership roles and the different activities that I could participate in.
Okay. Interesting. So did you have a middle school FFA chapter that went all the way, I guess, started at the 6th grade level?
Yep, so the fun part about my chapter is that we actually let all of our middle schoolers participate. Even though Minnesota FFA technically starts at 7th grade, we invite our 6th graders in so that way they could get a year preview and start becoming more involved in the FFA activities. So that really helps people get involved at a younger age and get to know a little bit more about FFA right before they jump in more in their high school years. That's really been cool to be able to recruit people in the middle school because a lot of them are really passionate about their projects at such a young age.
That is great. Man, I'm happy for you that you got to start that soon. Had you been involved in the 4-H prior to that?
I had been, yes. I joined 4-H when I was in first grade when me and my cousins had actually gotten our first set of four goats. And so I began showing at the county fair then. And so I've been involved in 4-H and FFA since I was able to start.
Okay. And have you been showing exclusively goats that entire time, or have you been showing sheep as well?
So I started off with the goat project, and then I actually showed 2 years of some dairy cattle, some market
Oh,
dairy.
okay.
So that was just a fun little project there, and besides all the other animals, and then I did sheep, and I've still been doing the sheep and goat project, but then I've also done dogs alongside that. So
Oh,
between those
really?
four different projects.
All right. I've never even watched a dog show at the fair. So when you show dogs, is it like one of those obstacle course things that you see, or is it more like showing a goat where you set it up and assess it that way?
So there's actually a couple different competitions. So you can do obedience, which is that main part where you make them stand still, and kind of examine what their body looks like. And then there's another thing that I actually was a lot more successful in was called rally. So what you would do in that is you would take your dog and you would go through a series of different commands that are at different stop points,
Mm-hmm.
and you would see how fast you could get through that kind of like a test, and that would rank how well you did. And if you had the dog do all the correct things, or if they just kind of half did the things that they were supposed to. So that was a really cool competition. I was actually grand champion at the state fair 1 year with my dog in
Really?
that rally competition. So that was a really cool opportunity there.
That is
But yeah, there's a
awesome.
whole bunch of different things that you can do at the dog project. And I have not ever done the agility work before though, but that
Okay.
I think is really cool.
Well, congratulations, man. Grand champion. That's huge. I'm assuming you used or participated with the same dog each time. Am I right about that?
So I actually switched around. So I
Okay.
actually began with an Australian Shepherd, and then a couple of years later, I threw in a Great Pyrenees.
Oh,
And so I only did the dog project for I think about 4 years. And so I've been out of it for a little bit of time now, but I really enjoyed that project just because dogs seem a lot more different than livestock.
mm-hmm.
They seem to have a lot more of their own, like, I want to be the boss. And so, yeah, it's really different compared to the goats and sheep. So that was a really cool experience in its own part there was working with those.
Okay. And did you do all the training yourself, or is it a matter of you can get assistance with the training, but then you're in charge and you command the dog during the competition?
So I attended practices, I think once or twice a week. I would gather with other dog project members in my county, and we'd actually practice doing the obedience, doing the rally, and all those other projects. And so we'd get help with a trainer, but then you'd have to go home and practice with your own animals, just like you do with livestock. So there I had to learn to make my dogs listen to me, and that's really where a lot of the time and effort was put in. But I did get assistance from a lot of other people in the dog project.
Okay. Wow. You've done it. You've done it all, and here you are. Now you're a senior. You're involved in leadership in the FFA at multiple different levels. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so in 10th grade, I began serving on my chapter level as a reporter, and I thought that was a really cool opportunity just because I served a little bit in 4-H before I joined FFA. And so I really enjoyed the leadership aspect, and FFA was completely different for me. That's the organization I really fell in love with. So when I got involved in the leadership side on my chapter, I was like, wow, I really want to keep doing this. And so the next year, I actually applied for not only a chapter office again, but also my region level officer placement. So I served as an assistant officer on the region level. And that actually serves about over 1,000 members with 32 different chapters. So it's really a large area here in Southeast Minnesota.
Hmm.
And then I was able to also just personally serve on my chapter level. And then this last year as a senior, I've been able to serve as the region reporter and then my chapter president. And then right now I'm actually applying for state office. So I'll go through a
Ah,
series of interviews with a couple other members and we'll see the results here in April.
awesome. Well, hey, good luck to you. When will you know in April? Since this is obviously coming out on April 12th, when will you find out?
I will discover on April 23rd, I believe, is when it's set to be released, but
Very
it should be
cool.
good.
Oh man, good luck. That'll be really cool. And how far do you want to take this? When will be unbelievably optimistic when you become a state officer? Then do you have your eyes set on the next level after that?
Right now, I'm planning just to keep it at state office, but you never know what really happens in that year of service if you can continue on there. I know a lot of other people who are really dedicated to leadership, and I'm really excited to see the things that they do. And I know that they've changed so much through their leadership abilities. So I wonder if there will be changes in myself. But I'm actually looking at other options because maybe it's still remaining involved in FFA, but taking my leadership to other areas. whether it's my future college or
Hmm.
whether it's a different organization. That's really important is also to branch out because I want to be involved with different levels of agriculture, not only youth agriculture. So that's been something I've been looking forward to is extending my leadership to other places as well.
Awesome. Man, I'm excited for you. What a fun time of life. Really, really cool. And you sound like you're kind of pumped up for it, which is awesome.
Oh, definitely. I'm so excited for these next couple of steps.
Cool. All right. Well, let's do this. I would love to acknowledge your FFA advisor or advisors. I don't know how many you have there, but how many do you have at Triton High School, and who are they?
So currently we have 3 advisors, which has been super great this last year. Right now we have Mr. Ickler, who's been there my whole FFA career, as well as Mr. Olson and Miss Zimmerman. But in the past, I've also had Mr. Dinsey, who is now the Owatonna FFA advisor. So I really had a lot of variety as far as my advisors. So it's been really great to have all their input and guidance throughout my time at FFA. So I really appreciate all that they've done for me, but especially Mr. Ickler for being there every step of the way.
That is great. Thank you so much for acknowledging them. We love it when students do that. What I've got written down for your supervised agricultural experiences, I have goat and sheep production. And so obviously you've done a ton of activities, but you listed these as your SAE. So tell me what these entail and why these are what are listed for your supervised agricultural experience.
So as I said before, I actually began the goat project back in first grade when I bought 4 meat goats alongside my extended family. And since then, I really discovered I have a love for that project. And each year after that, we grew a little bit more and more. And then in 2012, when I was in third grade, me and my sister actually began our own flock of Southdown sheep with 2 bred ewes. And since then, we got a little bit more involved in the sheep side as well, just because my stepdad has experience on the Suffolk side and Hampshire sheep area. So I got guidance from him. But the goat side has really been my favorite project because we started from the ground up. We had probably the worst goats that you could find, and we really built up because that was just something that all of us enjoyed. And especially in the last couple of years, the last 4 or 5 years, we've really seen tremendous changes here on our genetic side, our animal husbandry skills. And so we've gone from being last place at the county fair to having the reserve champion meat
Mm,
goat at the Minnesota State Fair and having class winners at Exarban, and doing really well at other national shows like Louisville and American Royal. So that's been really cool to see the changes there. But also increased our customer base has been really outstanding here in the last couple of years. And so between the goat and sheep project, I've really learned a whole lot of skills, and I'm really excited to see where it takes me here in the future.
wow, you guys have really grown that up to where you're traveling
Mhm.
all the way to Kentucky. And where's the American Royal Show at?
That is in Kansas City, Missouri.
Is that right? Wow. So you're really traveling. So now, is it still a partnership with you and your sister?
Yep. So right now we actually have 30 Southdown sheep, um, most of those that are brood ewes, and then also a couple replacements. And we're kind of sustaining the same amount of numbers right now, but keeping the high quality genetics. It's really kind of a manageable number right now for us because there's not a huge demand as far as the Southdown weather side here in southeast Minnesota. But there's a good market for the Southdown ewes, and me and my sister enjoy showing those at the county fair and state fair. And that's really been a successful project on those. I know in 2019, we actually had the Supreme Champion breeding ewe with one of our Southdown ewes that we raised. So it's really grown on that side too. And so we're kind of sustaining it right now at a manageable number. But the goat side has gotten really big. And so with that number between me and my extended family, right now we're raising about 160 brood does.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That all on your 10 acres, or when you say the extended family, do you have other land that you've got goats on as well?
So we have the 10 acres here, but half of that is also fields that my family rents out. So we have one large barn and then a shed that we use. But our extended family has a couple pastures, and then one barn and 2 sheds that we use. So there's a little bit more land over there. But for the most part, a lot of the animals are actually kept on our farm too.
Okay.
So between those 2 areas, the goats really transportate between those.
Okay. Now you said earlier meat goats are you breed specific in the meat breeds?
So we started off with boar goats, commercial boar goats, so we don't register any of them.
Mm-hmm.
But as the years have gone by, we've also had a couple other goats that we've kind of had blended in during our embryo transfer program. So sometimes we have a little bit of dairy meat mix ones that receive the eggs of our top end show stock. And so now it's gotten to be a little bit more blended throughout because maybe one's got like 1/8 dairy in them.
Okay.
But we have kind of blended, but most of them are boar goats. Most of them are almost all boar goats. We just don't register them.
Okay. And I know a lot of people like to cross the boar goats with well, you help me out. Which dairy breed is it that is a really popular cross?
So right now we actually have a lot of different dairy breeds that we use. I know we have a couple pygmy ones actually.
Oh, really?
Um, yes, and those ones are just smaller ones to make a little bit more of a larger recipient doe for the future use. But we have a lot of, I think, must be Alpines, and we have a couple Nubians,
Okay.
and as well as I think it's actually mostly Nubians that we have.
Okay.
hmm
Well, man, you just said a key word, recipient. So are you and your sister, are you involved in embryo transfers with your goats then?
Yep. So on the goat side, we do a lot with the embryo transfer work and artificial insemination, and then on the sheep side, we just do artificial insemination. But that's been a really big project that my parents got me involved with, as well as my sister. And so every summer we have different projects that we do at the goat side. I think we flush them twice, and so we're able to take, I think it's about our top 10 those that we have, and we're able to flush all those and hopefully receive about 50 eggs that we can use, and then we place those into our recipient does. And that's really helped us, especially in our early kidding ages, because now we have a lot of top end animals to sell right now, which is a peak of sales season. So here in Minnesota, we have a lot of demand right now, here in May and then early April. So, or in March and early April. And so right now is actually the perfect time to be able to sell them. So we like to kid them out in December. And so we're doing a lot of breeding
Okay.
in July.
Okay. So breeding in July, kidding December, selling in March and April for a fair that takes place. Is it going to be August or is it late July?
So our show season here in the Midwest really ranges between June. A lot of county fairs are in July and early August, and then our
Okay.
state fair is in late August. So a lot of people are either targeting those county fairs or the state fair. And so for myself, I like to target the state fair quite a bit. But then I also have a couple of younger animals that I use for those national shows that I do attend here in the fall.
Okay, man, that's so impressive. Is there a business name for either one of these two, either the sheep or the goat businesses that you're running?
Yep. So our name is Northern Exposure Livestock, and that covers both the sheep side and the goat side. So that was a name we came up with a couple of years ago. We were thinking, what's really a name that kind of shows where our geographic location is. And so we came up with Northern Exposure just because here it gets so cold, and then in the summer it gets humid. So it's really kind of crazy, but it really helps with our location because there's not a whole lot of goat breeders here in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are down south or out west. And so we finally became a bigger breeder here in the Midwest. And so that's been really cool to have other people recognize us for being way far up north,
Uh-huh.
but still wanting our quality animals.
Very cool. And I'm sorry, the full name is Northern Exposure Livestock. Did I get that right?
Yep, Northern Exposure Livestock.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, who thought up that name?
That was actually my dad. So he came up with that.
The reason I'm asking is I bet he's close to my age. So I'm 47. I don't know how close he is, but did he just? I'm gonna bust him on something maybe here. Did he just say? Yeah, I just had this thought. We live in the north. I think we should call it Northern Exposure. Did he take 100% credit for that name?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was a couple of years ago, but I do think so that he came up with that name.
All right. Well, he may have come up with it completely organically, but for somebody my age, there was a really fun television show on when I was about, I don't know, late teens, early 20s called Northern Exposure. It was a lot of fun, and everybody watched it. So you'll have to see.
Really?
You'll have to see if you can bust him on that. That's
Yeah,
funny.
I'll have to ask him about that and see. Maybe he wasn't the only one that just came up with it in his head. Might have been a little bit of inspiration there.
Yeah, maybe there's some inspiration. All right. So with everything you're doing and all the traveling you're doing to show, how far away are you selling goats and sheep?
So we actually had a sale here on Tuesday night. And most of our goats actually did not stay in the state. We had animals reaching out to the East Coast where we sell to Pennsylvania to several different families. We have lots of animals start going down to Texas. We have ones going out to California and Oregon. So we really reach all ends of the United States. And so that's been really cool to watch us spread from just Minnesota families to then like Iowa, Wisconsin, and finally out to more like the edges here of the Midwest, and then finally all the way to all the different coasts. And so I think we've had sales now in at least half of the states.
Wow.
So we've really seen a whole lot of growth here in the last 2 years, especially on our sales side. And I That's only our first sale of the season was going out to all of these different states. And so I'm really excited to see what the rest of our sales do because as we grow bigger of a name, more people begin to recognize us and see,
Hmm.
wow, there's these Minnesota grower producers here. And so they're really excited to see what we got. And we really do have high quality animals, and it's not for the outrageous prices that you see in other states. And so that's really the perk about being here in the Midwest and not really having a huge name yet is you can really find deals on the animals here in the Midwest.
Hmm. No kidding. And so this sale that you had, was it done over social media, over satellite? How did that work?
Yep, it was an online sale through Willoughby Livestock, and so they do a lot of different sales on there where people can go in and bid on the animals, and so that's been a really popular thing here in the last year, especially with COVID and
Hmm.
not being able to have as many in-person sales. It's been really useful to have all these online sales, and I've really seen lots of changes on that style too, because I've seen farms that always would just have in-person sales finally turn to these online sales, and they're actually having more people purchase their animals from different locations, and it provides youth the experience to be able to look out and see what else is out there besides just this producer here in my own county or in my region. So it's been really cool to see how that boom here in the last year, especially.
Wow. Okay. So when you do something like that, and let's say somebody from California buys a goat from you, then is it their responsibility to arrange for transportation? Is that something you include? How does that part of it work?
So I think the really great part about the livestock industry is that there's so many connections that people make with each other, where you're able to rely on each other to help out. And so for us, we provide transportation to different national locations. Like we'll bring some sale animals to Des Moines, Iowa. We'll bring some to Indianapolis when we go there for live sales. And then you just know someone that's like, oh, I am stopping in California on my way home,
Hmm.
or they're getting close to California, and so you're able to connect with all these different people and arrange transportation. So doesn't necessarily mean that the person has to drive all the way from California to Minnesota, but they're able to find different people who are driving along the way, and so they're able to actually move the animal from trailer to trailer and be able to hand it off that way. So that's the really cool part about making those relationships with other producers is you're able to work with each other and help each other out as far as that point too.
Hmm. Okay. Now, kidding out goats in December in Minnesota, that is no joke. I think I heard you say you have a shed, but describe to us how the logistics of this works.
So yeah, it is very cold here, especially in January is when our lowest temps hit, and so we'll have -20 nights out with wind chill not even included in that.
Hmm.
And so you have to be really careful with goats, especially. The sheep are a little bit more resilient, but it's really hard to keep goats alive sometimes in the
Yeah.
extreme cold. And so what we've had to do is actually this year we insulated all of the walls of our shed, put in a new roof, and that actually really helped us. But you have to be really careful about what your facilities are like because otherwise the animals are either kept in barn that's too cold, or maybe you pack it so much that there's no ventilation and then all the moisture builds up inside. And that really causes a lot of pneumonia or other lung issues. So it's really important that way is that you look at your facilities and try to find what is the best plan for us. And so for us, that was putting in the insulation on the sides and then putting in that new roof, but also having better ventilation to the roof as well. So
Okay.
that's really saved us a lot of time and effort there because we actually had a lot less illnesses this year with our livestock.
Hmm.
And so that's really helped them boom too here in this growing period because they didn't have any setbacks earlier in life. So that's how we have managed with the cold. And then, of course, there's always heat lamps.
Hmm.
And then we have heating in some parts of the barn, but not all parts. But that's really important. Is just keep an eye on your livestock and make sure that they're kept warm, even in the negative degrees here in
Yeah.
Minnesota.
So if it's 20 below out and you're kidding, what will the temperature be in your shed where you've got the does and they're having their kids?
So we have so our barn's kind of sectioned off into three different areas, and so we have a kidding area with a drop pen, and that area is heavily insulated, and so that one's kept about 50 degrees, I think.
Oh,
And
okay.
then you go to the heated area, which doesn't have as much insulation, but it's got that heater, and so that's also kept to about 55 to 60. And then you go to the back part of the barn, and that's where it gets a little bit colder. And on some of the coldest nights, the waters begin to freeze up in the pails back there.
Hmm.
Um, and so that back there, I'd probably say it's about 40 to 30 to 20 degrees back there, depending on what kind of night it is. And if it's really windy too, that makes an impact too because our barn sits on a hill.
Mm.
And so the wind can kind of get to it too at times. So it really varies in the back. But for the most part, we're able to keep the ones that are most vulnerable to the cold up in the front part of the barn where they're able to stay warm.
Okay. Interesting.
Mhm.
And then do you have enough space in the barn that all of your does and all of the kids are in there for quite some amount of time, or is there an age, a certain amount of days the kids have been alive for where they need to get booted out of the barn and you're bringing in a new set? How does that work?
So the kids stay in the barn and in the protection for I think most of their life, until they become about a yearling, and
Okay.
then they can be kicked out. But most of the brood does actually are kept with their babies until they're weaned, which is about 60 days. And then after that point, we want to move in more moms and babies, and so then we move the does back to our other families' facilities, and then the sheep are moved back to our other shed, which is got it's sited on three sides, but then it's got an open front. And so they're able to stay in there and they're okay because they have thicker wool, and then the other brood does are have enough bedding where they're kept warm.
Okay.
But the babies do have to stay in the barn, otherwise they do really suffer the consequences of the cold here.
Mm,
Just because one day it might be 60 degrees out, but the next it might be 20 degrees and it's snowing, so it's really hard
mm-hmm.
here to be able to push them outside, say, hey, you're okay. But then have the weather just really rip through
Yeah.
southeast Minnesota. So it's really important for us to be able to keep the kids in the barn, and especially at sales season when we have to shear off all the weathers, then they're kept in the heated area of the barn so that way they don't get too cold.
Okay. Okay, so you've got enough room in the barn that all the does can stay with the kids for 60 days inside. And then you're going to wean everybody at 60 days or right around there. The does are going to head back out, but those kids are staying under cover. They're staying in that barn.
Yep. Hmm.
Okay. Really interesting. I'm fascinated with how this all works. I told you this could be a conversation. I get very interested in this stuff. Okay. Really cool. Now, this has led you to some proficiency awards, right?
Yes, it has. So I started my sheep proficiency first just because that was a project I had developed a little bit more over the last couple of years, just because it started off as my project, and the goat project was more of a family activity. And so the sheep one I had a lot more stake in at the beginning. And so I've been completing a sheep proficiency for the last 3 years, and then I competed at state for those 3 years as well. And so I actually started off as a third place in the state proficiency, and then the last 2 years, I've been a second place at state. And so I'm hoping next year I can maybe be a first place in state,
Mm,
just because it's challenging. I'm a breeding person with a little bit of a smaller flock, and there's a lot of market people here in Minnesota, so I have to compete against them.
hmm
But it's been really cool to learn about all the skills I've been developing and be able to reflect on my time in the sheep project. And then on the goat side, especially in the last 2 years, I've really been amping up the size of my own herd and then my policies. And so last year I competed at the state level, but I was a little bit lower. And then this year I was third at state. And I'm hoping to do better at state next year because as I continue to grow and increase, especially on my goat side, I really want to become a top producer here in Minnesota.
Very cool. That's super interesting. You're graduating soon, like we already talked about. What is next for you after high school?
So, in case no one can tell so far, I really do enjoy the animal project. I could talk about it all day, and it's one of my most favorite things in the world. So, I really want to stay involved in that side. And so, I'm decided to attend the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and study animal science with a pre-vet emphasis, with hopes of becoming back involved in the food animal area and be able to work with ruminants with like goats and sheep and cattle, just because that's something I'm really passionate about. And especially here in Minnesota, we don't have a ton of people who know a lot about goats.
Hmm
We have a little bit more about the beef side, pig side, even sheep. But there's really just a whole lot of unexplored territory with the goat side. And so that's what I think I can really do well is help explore that and establish more of a standing here on the goat side in Minnesota. Otherwise, besides that, I'd look into opportunities in government, regulation, or working with the American Veterinary Board. So I'm really interested in that animal science side. So I'm really looking forward to that here in the next couple of years.
That's great. Good for you. And so, are you currently planning on vet school after your undergrad, or is that something that you're still making a decision on?
Yep, I plan right after I get my bachelor's degree in animal science, I plan to get right back into vet school if as long as they accept me. But I plan on
Hmm
working really hard in school, just because I'm super passionate about food animal science, especially. And so I really want to get serving the community as fast as I can. So I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to attend the University of Minnesota Vet School, if not being able to work somewhere else here in the Midwest and be able to learn new experiences that way.
That's awesome. I was animal science pre-vet when I started college, and then I changed my emphasis, and then I changed my emphasis again, staying with animal science, because I realized that I did not have either A, the brain power, or B, the work ethic to be a vet student. Now, you, I can tell, do. So I'm very excited for you. But I do recall this. It really stood out to me. I was in, I don't know what class it was. It was my junior year. There was another girl in my class with me who was a junior as well, but a brilliant student. Just the type of student that would make you really angry. When on the curve, you'd get a 29% and you'd get a C minus, and she'd screw up the whole curve. She got like 100% on the test, right? And I remember our teacher that day, our professor, I should say, made this big announcement, which was amazing. As a junior, she'd already been accepted to vet school, and they plucked her right out of college. She never finished her bachelor's degree, went straight to vet school. And I didn't realize that was a possibility. But I saw that with my own two eyes. I don't know if it can still work that way or not. And I'm sure you would know more about it than me, but I will never forget that. Sitting in there just struggling to pass this class, and she doesn't even have to finish the final year of college. She just headed straight to vet school. It blew my mind.
Wow, that is crazy. Yeah. And I know as far as the University of Minnesota, they actually have a program for people who are interested in the food animal science side. And so you actually just do 3 years of undergrad, and then your first year of vet school, they combine that with your last year of undergrad. So at the end, it's only a total of 7 years. But no, that's crazy just to be accepted right out of your undergraduate like that. That is awesome for her. And that's super cool that you're also in that animal science with a pre-vet emphasis at one point. And here you are living out the dream.
Yeah. Well, anybody now, they don't, as long as you can get accepted into the college, which back when I went to college, it wasn't hard to get accepted. You could major and you could call yourself pre-vet all day long. But there's a big difference between saying I'm pre-vet and actually not getting on academic suspension and then changing the emphasis on your major multiple times. I'm not a vet by any stretch of the imagination, but no, I did finish an animal science degree, and I am better off for it. That is for sure. And Anna, I am very, very excited for you, and I want to make sure I don't leave anything out. But let's do this. Before we wrap it up, I would love to ask your advice for other students. You have a ton of energy and a ton of passion, obviously, for what you have discovered. Was there ever anything that you tried in the FFA in all these 7 years you've been in the FFA so far? Was there anything you tried where you went, that's not the right fit for me?
That's actually a difficult question because it's always been like, what's your favorite activity? And so that actually takes a little bit of thinking. I think for me, there was growth challenges for sure. I think there's some things that I tried. I was like, wow, that was really difficult. But eventually I came up on top. And so for me, I actually did creed speaking my first year as a freshman. And so I competed in that. I was super excited. And then I go to compete at the regions and I get 7th out of 9. And I'm like, wow, that was not very good. I was not super impressed with myself. And so after that, I steered away a little bit more from those public speaking sides just because I was like, that really did not go well for me. But then 2 years later in my 11th grade, I decided I wanted to try extemporaneous speaking because there were so much different topics that you could talk about with agriculture. And I really just wanted to give it a go one more time. And so I gave it that a try again, even though I really had struggles that first time with creed speaking. And so I was actually trying a little bit harder and training myself to be a better speaker. And so in the end, I actually ended up getting first in my regions, and I was not able to compete at state just because our state convention got canceled as far as that.
Okay.
But I think that just really sometimes it happens where you try something your first time and you really just struggle with that a lot. But then maybe you go back a couple of years later because you have time to grow and change and see different interests. And so that really helps you in the end as you're able to retry things here in FFA because you have sometimes up to 4 years, 5 years, 6 years to try something. And so maybe you don't really like it that first time, but maybe you can try it again. If you still don't like it, then you can hop on to the next thing. But sometimes things just change over your course of your time here in FFA or really in any organization or any aspect of life.
Well, Anna, that is really great to hear. And the reason I asked you that question that way is because so many people will tell you to go find your passion. And you obviously have a ton of passion for what you do and what you're about to do. And I think you are that student I was talking about that I was jealous of in class that is doing so well, where I'm sitting there just banging my head against the wall trying to figure it all out. And but it's important to know that not everything's a passion to you. that there are things that you've tried and it didn't turn out to be where you were going to put the emphasis. And a lot of times that's just as valuable as figuring out what your passion is figuring out what it is not, so you can direct yourself where your natural energy should flow. Have you found that with yourself?
I think I have because over time, throughout my time in high school, it's not necessarily FFA, but other things I try to be involved with just because I try to be a well-rounded student. So I try to balance my academics and FFA and all the other extracurriculars. And so I actually tried other extracurriculars and I found, wow, this is not really something I'm
Mm-hmm.
interested in. And I realized that my time is valuable because not only do I get to contribute it to things such as my farm, and FFA, but also just time for myself. And so I totally agree with what you're saying. That's really important to find something that you're passionate about, and that's the advice that I give a lot of people is to be yourself and to do things that you love because that is the best way that you can spend your time.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily try everything and be successful. It's enjoy what you're doing because that will truly make it successful in its own way. Is being able to do what you truly love. And so I totally agree with you on that because it's so important to be passionate and then do the things that you love.
Well, Anna, this has been a thrill. I'm very excited for you. Can't wait to see where you take this next. And thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast talking to you and talking about my project. And hopefully, other people can take some word from my advice and go out and enjoy their project.
Well, thank you for being here, everybody. And thank you to Anna Ridenour for joining us here on the Off Farm Income Podcast today. Hey, we would love to have you click that subscribe button down below and become a subscriber here to our YouTube channel for more interviews about agriculture, the FFA, and all of that, just right here on our YouTube channel. And we'd love to have you join us on social media as well. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, everybody. And until next time, enjoy your journey to the ultimate lifestyle business, agriculture.